So welcome to the Keston Center's Fall Lecture, Baylor in Deeds, Interfaith and Intra-Faith Harmony, Strengthening Leadership for Women Globally Through Sports. As we highlight not only Baylor in Deeds, but the deeds of partner institutions in the United States and in the spirit of the university's worldwide focus in Pakistan. We're honored to have Baylor Provost Nancy Brickhouse to offer an official welcome on behalf of Baylor University. Dr. Brickhouse.
Thank you, and so glad you could be here today. I'm excited about this panel myself. I think I'm going to learn a lot. It's an exciting time to be at Baylor as we fling our green and gold abroad all over the world and learn from other people, other faith traditions, ways in which we can learn from one another in ways that benefit human flourishing. So I love the depiction, although I will have to say somebody did point out to me that according to this particular depiction, Waco is the center of the universe. You know, and once you've seen that, you can't unsee it. But we're nevertheless very excited about our place in the world, and I'm very excited to hear from these individuals who have formed important relationships. I should also say, the idea around Pro Mundo is not just simply to fling your green and gold abroad, actually. It's really about establishing meaningful relationships and partnerships, relationships that are deep and multifaceted. And I think that's what this represents, is exactly the kind of relationships that we want to establish in parts of the world where we can have an impact and where we can learn from the people who are there. So I think I would like to introduce the moderator of the panel, and then he's going to introduce the rest of the panel. Is that right?
Why don't you let me introduce him in just a minute, because I think these people need to know a little bit more about Keston.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, in that case, the microphone is yours.
Well, what is Keston Center? Why Baylor, and how does Keston relate to today's topic? Keston College, later Institute, was founded in 1969 by Anglican priest Michael Bordeaux. Earlier in 1959, think about 1959, most of you were not alive in 1959. As an Oxford student, Michael took part in the very first student exchange program between Great Britain and the Soviet Union. During his time at Moscow University, he witnessed the start of Nikita Khrushchev's anti-religion campaign and, of course, became very concerned. 5 years later, again in Moscow, through a series of divine circumstances, Michael met a group of Russians from whom he had previously received a note asking for his help. They told him about increasing pressure, religious persecution, and destruction of churches and other houses of worship. They asked him, quote, to be our voice where we cannot be heard. At that moment, Bordeaux said he took up their call to be the voice of the voiceless. In 1969, Reverend Canon Dr. Michael Bordeaux with Sir John Lawrence, who himself found a divine note under his pillow in a Soviet hotel that said, help us believers, established Keston College in England, quote, to make known the needs of all religious believers and to uphold religious freedom in every case. So the mission of Keston was to tell the truth by gathering and disseminating reliable information about the situation with all religions and denominations in the countries of the now former communist bloc and under other totalitarian regimes. A vast library and archive formed Keston's core, and the Institute's Keston News Service produced authenticated reports used by the BBC, AP, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and others that served as a tool for exerting political pressure that made a difference. With the breakup of the Soviet Union, Keston experienced a significant decline in donations. The news service ceased operations, and the Institute began searching for a location for its stunning collection on religious persecution and religious freedom. Oxford's Keston Institute accepted Baylor's proposal, and in 2007 passed its library and priceless archives encompassing 30 denominations and religions in 33 languages to the newly created Keston Center to maintain, preserve, expand, and make available those resources, to promote research on religion and religious persecution, to plan and present public presentations like today's, and to help shed light on those without a voice, even in today's world. This afternoon's lecture sheds light on strengthening women's leadership and voice through sports by supporting, equipping, and promoting the work of female sports teachers and coaches and their collaborating schools, universities, and government institutions in a part of the world where women are experiencing more pressure and that continues to face ongoing tensions between progress and recent challenges due to religious, cultural, and socioeconomic factors. Now, Provost Brickhouse, would you introduce our moderator?
Charles Ramsey will be moderating the panel today. He is a two-time alum of Baylor University, first as a university scholar, then later as a master's degree student in religion. And then he got his PhD at the University of Birmingham, and then came back to Texas and to Baylor, where he was director of Baptist Student Missions until he took on his current role, which is... It's actually not. Associate Chaplain. I should have been able to remember that. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. And I should also say, Charles has traveled all over the world. He's a missionary's kid. So he knows this space very, very well.
Thank you. Thank you, Provost Brickhouse. What a joy to be with you. And let me just say good afternoon and welcome all to the Keston Fall Lecture. And I want to begin by expressing thanks to those in the room who really represent the spirit of collaboration behind all of this. I see people from the Center of Global Engagement and from the Graduate School, from the School of Education, School of Business, the College of Arts and Sciences, Robbins College, Truett Seminary's Institute for Faith and Sports, Baylor Athletics, the Office of Spiritual Life, especially our Department of Mission Service and Public Life. And I just say that, I kind of roll that out to say it took a team to get us this far, and the hope of today is not to report on what was, but hopefully to plant some seeds and to cast some vision for what we can do from here. It took a team to get this far, and it's going to take a team to move ahead. It is such a joy for me personally to be in this building, in Armstrong Browning Library. It's, to me, one of the most beautiful buildings anywhere, really. Additional joy in that I was married here about 30 years ago, and my lovely wife is on the panel with us, and the two of us are both Baylor grads, and we moved to India and then to Pakistan, and we're together there for almost 20 years. And so it's a very meaningful time for us to be engaged in this work and to share from our story. Well, let me introduce our panel, and we'll go from there. Let me begin by introducing Mrs. Hina Abel. She's a dissertation fellow in higher education studies and leadership, and she is an educator and administrator who was at Kinnaird College for Women in Lahore, where we were, and also at Foreman Christian College in Lahore, Pakistan. I would like to introduce also Meredith Frey, who's also a graduate student. It's a Master of Arts in the School of Leadership, and she is also a working teacher, a current teacher in San Antonio. Dr. Magnusen, who's Associate Professor of Sports Management and who teaches in the School of Education, their Graduate Sport Management program. And my wife, Brooke Ramsey, who is a Master's in Classical Education, Master's in Fine Arts that she's completing, and is the head of the grammar school at a school here in Waco, the Valor Prep School. And then last but not least, leading us today, the PI of the grant and very much the team leader, is Dr. William Sterrett. Bill is the chair and professor of educational leadership. And so why don't we begin there? I'm going to sit back down and let the panel have their way, okay? So Bill, let's begin with, can we have an overview of Idea Sport and tell us about the grant and what this was all about?
Well, thank you, Charlie, and good afternoon, everyone. Idea Sport, as you can see from the acronym, is focused on promoting outreach, been able to build in aspects such as teamwork, and it was a grant that was sponsored by the U.S. State Department. And it came to Baylor, and I'm convinced because of who Baylor is, it's designed to be an Interfaith, Intra-Faith grant. So how can we work together with universities from the U.S. and in Pakistan to be able to focus to empower women in the area of sports and in leadership too? As Charlie said, it was between a number of universities here at Baylor. There is my previous institution in North Carolina, the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, Kinnaird, Government College in Faisalabad, and then our host institution at the University of Education, Lahore, which is on the eastern side of Pakistan. Now, I've got to talk about the origin story. Like many good things in Waco, I've got to give Chip and Joanne credit. Because Chip and Joanna, I was watching a rerun as I was putting away the Christmas tree the very first year I was here, and I heard in the background that they were helping a family move. This was a rerun, the Ramseys from Lahore, Pakistan. And I saw the pictures in the background that I myself had been 2019, several years ago, and I said, I've got to connect with Charlie Ramsey. He and I had lunch together, and I said, Charlie, would you ever be willing to go back? I've been funded before in a grant, and I think there's opportunity for us to work together. So Baylor University was that bridge that helped us sort of reconnect some of his very extensive work there and my one-time previous grant effort in a powerful way. And I think the Lord opened up doors for us because I just prayed. I said, I don't know of any grants that are out there, and this would be pretty unique too, but what if we found a way to return? So we did within a year, and I want to tell you a little bit about how that happened, but also the objectives and the goals of the grant. As Kathy Hillman said, we are here to sort of talk about how a grant effort can leverage leadership opportunities, can get results through our mission of Pro Mundo, and can enable us to do impactful research in a powerful way. Those are the partners from the various universities that we had about 6 months of planning after we were notified of the grant in the summer of 2024, knowing that we would be going in December of 2023. And that was the work that we did. There's the language from the U.S. State Department. So that grant that we started on in summer 2023 said, how can we promote leadership for women through sports, really focusing on teamwork, being able to bring new sports together to build on existing sports they had, and some of these sports were ones that we learned in a new way. The goal was to be able to impact 1,000 female students in Eastern Pakistan. We'll talk more about the results there, but we wanted to show that there was growth over time. We established benchmarks, and then each quarter would report back to the State Department on how we were learning and growing over time. So we were focused on female students in the schools in Pakistan. We had 10 participating schools in Pakistan participate, 4 of the universities that I mentioned too, and we leveraged technology to be able to share ideas in Padlet. We wanted to show video clips, be able to share strategies of how this looked like in their schools. And a big part of the grant was paying indirect cost to allow us to do the work, and also cost to allow equipment, much needed equipment such as ping pong tables, to be able to go to each of these 10 schools and the 4 participating universities. As well as being a department chair, I serve as a co-executive director in our Baylor Center for School Leadership. My colleague John Eckert is here, and most of those Baylor insignias that you see, those Baylor logos all over the map, he has been to those places in Australia. He's been to places in Europe and in Canada, New Zealand. So we are very happy to add one here in Pakistan to be able to show how we can impact through the center, leveraging professional development, and also one of our students who is a part of our program that you'll hear more about. So it's part of our work here at Baylor.
Well, let's zoom in on Pakistan. So, Hina, you have lived and taught in Pakistan. Can you please tell us more about the country and the opportunity for this sort of engagement?
Thank you very much. So I was born and raised in Pakistan, and in order for you to have an understanding of what Baylor indeed looks like, I'd like to set the framework for Pakistan. First of all, Pakistan is located in South Asia. It was separated out of India in 1947, so we only have like a short history of 77 years, really. What's known now as Bangladesh, and the Center for Global Affairs knows that we have a lot of Bangladeshi students. It used to be East Pakistan. It seceded in 1971. Well, since we're situated in the US, it is imperative for you to know that Pakistan has had a strategic alliance with the US, particularly in two main fronts during the Cold War time and the war on terror in Afghanistan. Because we are basing this talk out of Keston, another piece of vital information is that socialism has actually significantly impacted Pakistan, and strategies that we have deployed within the country and through the country to diminish the effects of socialism in the entire region of South Asia have actually led to devastating consequences for the country that we are still reeling with. Pakistan is by no means a homogeneous country. We seem to look alike, but we have 17 ethnic groups. The predominant ones are displayed here, and if you see on the right side, or the east of Pakistan, the green region, that's the province of the Punjab, from which I hailed. The Punjabis, as we are called, are Indo-Aryan in terms of ethnicity. If we could move forward. Additionally, in terms of homogeneity, we again have diversity in our languages. We have 70 to 80 languages that are spoken throughout Pakistan. Urdu was supposed to be the unifying language. So when the British divided the land and Pakistan was going to be formed, the political structure knew that something needs to unify the people groups. As you can see from this chart, Urdu is still only spoken by 7.6% of the population, but it is the national language of Pakistan. Our focus was on the women of Pakistan. Now, whether a woman is single or married, whether she is educated or not educated, a woman from Pakistan remains dependent on the men in her household. So that's fathers, husbands. They remain dependent in terms of simple household purchases, access to healthcare, furthering education opportunities, and access to whether they will actually be employed, so economic opportunities. Women, as you can see on the chart, represent 48% of Pakistan, but only 23% of them are in the local labor force, with only about 3 in senior and middle management positions. So women are severely marginalized by all means in Pakistan. So when in a patriarchal society, we're thinking about sports, we're talking about women going into men's fields, right? They're going to be marginalized. They are marginalized, and they will for the time being. Women's sports in Pakistan are not recognized, and they are not acknowledged. So we will not find women's games televised or just displayed on TV or any place. And you can't really have women sports have spectators. So these are not public games as such. Because of this lack of acknowledgement, this also means that there is very little sponsorship for women's sports. So we're talking equipment, training facilities, we're talking sponsorship to travel. These women don't have opportunities, and certainly not opportunities for continued professional development. So what Baylor did was hugely impactful. The start is huge for Pakistan and for these women sports teachers and athletes. I come from the Christian community of Pakistan, specifically the Presbyterian denomination. So I want to talk a little bit about Christian invisibility in sports circles. First of all, when Pakistan was formed, we had 27% of minorities. I'm wearing white today to represent the white portion on the flag of Pakistan, which represents the minority. So we have a green and white flag, and the white is supposed to represent the minorities. Over time, because of the constant suppression by the larger culture of Pakistan, minorities have reduced to 5% of the population, and in that, Christians are about 1.3%. So, Christians, and particularly Christian women, need to be thought not just as marginalized, but really as the underdog of the underdogs. So there is severe suppression for them on so many fronts. One thing to understand is that if the larger culture does not invite women to these forums and to these initiatives, they're perpetuating this larger culture of invisibility, and they're really reinforcing these inequalities. It is interesting that among the groundwork that was happening locally on the ground, and as well as the team, I was the only Pakistani Christian present. And I will just have to say thanks so much to Baylor, and particularly to my department chair, Dr. Sterrett. I am so grateful that you allowed this to happen, because this is how we do interfaith. It has to be local Christian presence with local Muslim presence or the other religions there. That's very helpful. Christians were present, Christians are present, and in larger spaces, particularly in public institutions, we will find them in housekeeping staff, in landscaping staff, as security guards. And so with them there, they're on the right side to Dr. Sterrett and I in the picture. The institution did a cake cutting ceremony to recognize Christmas because we were there just a week before Christmas. And so the larger culture has begun to celebrate Christmas and also recognizes interfaith work in the country. My husband, who is a Presbyterian pastor, has a great hand in doing interfaith work, and so we're really happy to see some of these things. Even if they're just on the surface, it's something, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Hina. Now, Brooke, you were able to take leadership insights back to Pakistan. And so as a teacher and administrator, why was this work impactful for you and for the participants that you interacted with?
Thank you so much. Well, before I talk about myself, I want to talk about this amazing woman. Don't you just want to follow her wherever she leads? I love hearing you talk. So I know you're in education, but you should consider politics. Seriously, no, Hina is a very old friend of mine, and a cool story is that our children grew up together. So we knew each other in Lahore. She's one of my closest friends. And so to be here at Baylor together brings tears to my eyes, and to be on this panel, and this is my first time back to Pakistan since leaving 7 or 8 years ago, and I got to go with my very good friend. So it's friendships like my friendship with Hina that made living in Lahore more than bearable. It made it a joy, and that's really what it's about. And so I want to talk about a little bit about that, the human connection that we find in, interfaith dialogue is possible because we were all made in the image of God. And the image of God is not particular to any one religion. It's by nature of our very being created by God. And so you will find the image of God in every human person on the globe. And it's that image of God that allows us to develop friendships and to focus on our common humanity. It really is this human connection it's what education is about. It's what basically all of life is about. If we think that education really is a science of relations, a relationship with the knowledge of what we're learning, no matter whether it be sports or science or math, it's also a science of relations with the people that we're learning with. And that's what I got to do as I returned to Pakistan. And it was such a joy to remember that human connection that makes it all possible. These afternoon sessions that we had were designed to sort of give these local leaders a voice, sports leaders in Urdu. They were speaking in their own language, sharing their own experiences. These were coaches, and one woman got up and spoke about just her own experience as being in sports and growing up. She was a young woman, talked about her depression, her anxiety, how she overcame those obstacles, and her positive relationship with a coach. So she's just talking about very common human experiences that we all share together. By the end of the week, we were all laughing together. We were all playing together. Some women who showed up a little bit stiff from different cultural backgrounds or different villages or maybe even different languages within Pakistan, they began joking together, laughing together, playing together. Every afternoon, we either played cricket or soccer. And it's this kind of, I want to remind all of you, really, it's this kind of human connection through play, through laughter, through feasting that really is at the heart of any of our endeavors that we do for Pro Mundo. And it is the call of God on all of our lives, I believe. One of these women was just amazing. She went up and she was very passionate about self-defense and teaching women self-defense. So she demonstrated that on Dr. Sterrett, how she could steal his wallet, and that was one of my favorite memories. She definitely won, so we should have had that picture. So anyway, but also part of this feasting and part of this is just a basic human curiosity about others, about the other. And our team got to engage in that. Not only were they learning from us, but more often, if any of you travel, you know that we are the ones who benefit. We are the ones who learn so much. So it's that curiosity, that playing together. We got to visit the old city, the walled city. And again, if we're teaching others, if we want teachers to engage students as human persons, then we ourselves as researchers or administrators, the way we relate to one another really matters too. So we played, we laughed a lot, we feasted together with our other hosts, and this is what's so important, right, about all of our endeavors, but especially Baylor and all higher ed education institutions, is that we really do reflect the hospitality of God. And our hosts did that so well, and I hope that Baylor will continue to reflect that hospitality that was shown to us.
Thank you. Well, since the focus is on sports and leadership, let's turn to a sports expert. So, Mark, can you share a bit about kind of what we did and how you included alums and really some of our student athletes in this work, and how did we go about crafting the curriculum?
No, absolutely, and I appreciate you thinking very carefully about your color that you wore and the significance behind it, because I was not thinking when I wore purple, and there's a TCU rivalry. And for being the sports expert, my students just absolutely roasted me today, but I just thought it looked nice. So I was not thinking. So I'm in the sport management program, and as a result of that, I get to connect with a lot of really cool student athletes, both at Baylor and elsewhere. I was a college soccer player. And so one of the things that Bill wanted to do and the group wanted to do was connect athletes, especially female athletes from a variety of backgrounds, with the young ladies in Pakistan and get their perspectives on how sports help them become leaders, how sports help improve their confidence and teamwork. And so these are all people that are connected to Baylor. So in the bottom left corner is actually the two young ladies on the bottom are both former Baylor high jumpers. And so you have Maria, who is currently working with the Kansas City Chiefs, and then Aisha, who comes from Djibouti, and then she moved to France, and then she was a high jumper for Baylor, and so she had a tremendous kind of story of travel. And then Chanel was a volleyball player for Baylor. And then our former coach and U.S. national teamer, Marcy Johnson, initially we were going to have a very strong soccer focus. And so being a soccer player, my goal was to bring soccer players on the trip with us. And then our colleagues in Pakistan said that they would like to see more variety of sports. So we transitioned from that. So Marcy didn't make the trip with us, but she was able to just speak about her experiences and all that sports has been able to do for them. So that was a tremendously helpful, I think, narrative and perspective for the young ladies to get just from how powerful sports can be and encouraging them to be involved in sports and getting it from voices that they may be more comfortable with. And then just generally with the curriculum that we did is that we tried to provide them with, as you can just see, just a little glimpse, a little snapshot there of introducing them to sports, and we wanted our colleagues to have a voice and be able to speak to the sports that they wanted to do. So we were thinking soccer, and they wanted to do a little bit more variety of that. So we had badminton. We did get a little bit of soccer. Bill was passionate about this. We got to introduce, we weren't sure they'd be into it, but baseball, they ended up very much liking baseball and cricket. And then so we would have sessions in the morning where we would talk to them about the rules and how do you play the game and here's how you can go about teaching it. And then after we had kind of, as we shifted towards the afternoon, then it became much more application-based and kind of letting them kind of talk about how might you coach, what kind of team building activities can you do, how does this sport look in practice, and how can you go about teaching students in Pakistan how to be involved in these different sports.
Great, thank you so much. Now, Hina wasn't the only graduate student involved. We're fortunate to have Meredith, and she's in the school leadership program. So, Meredith, how did this enrich your experience as a student, and what are some of your perspectives from your outreach there?
Yes, I'm Meredith Frey, and a current master's in educational leadership at Baylor. And this learning about the Pakistan partnership that they had was super incredible because it connected to a lot of passions that I have and had of women's sports and then leadership and empowering women in that. And so I was really encouraged hearing about this as I started my master's program and was able to be connected and be a part. So I was able to do this through Zoom, which is incredible, the power of technology and really crafting a whole cross-cultural conference for women through Zoom. And so I was amazed just by how technology is connecting continent to continent, people to people, and it was really special to see that. But then also was able to use what I was using in my classroom. So I am a third grade teacher and was looking at the power of movement in the classroom. So moving not only from the sports field, but how do we bring movement into everyday learning? And so I was able to share on Zoom and share on how do we have movement breaks in the classroom, because we serve a God of movement and a God that is alive. And so when we think about our classrooms, we want classrooms that are living and moving and alive with activity. But also, how do we hold this sacred space of a classroom? And so I was able to share on movement breaks, giving children opportunities to move around, and that's at all levels. It's hard even for adults to sit in a seat at a meeting for 45 minutes. And so how can we get our students moving at elementary, middle, and high school levels? But then also, how can we encourage and also see that the leadership that we're learning in the classroom on the sports field as well. And so I was really thankful to be able to do that, was through Zoom. I was not able to go in December, but was able to go in March and meet face-to-face the professors that I had worked with on Zoom. I got to meet with them in person in March in Lahore, Pakistan. And so just amazing the relationships that was built and the cross-cultural connection, because as we've shared, it's all about relationships and building those relationships with people and educators all across the world. So I'm excited to the continued partnerships, not only at Baylor, but also what's going to happen with the continued partnerships in Pakistan and other universities coming together. And that really is where there's the transformation. And so bringing movement and strategies, not only in our classrooms in the US, but also across and learning from each other. And so I really learned a lot as we worked together and sharing strategies as well. And so it was really special. And then they also got to incorporate movement from afar. So I was able to be on Zoom and to see some of those movement breaks that happened in Lahore, Pakistan.
Thank you. Now, it's important to restate that this isn't just a report about a great trip to Pakistan, all right? It's more than that. So, Bill, tell us about kind of the impact of this and help us to look ahead as well and how this can continue to make a difference.
Sure, Charlie. This was a grant that we really planned out last summer, which would have been summer of 2023, and continues through the end of this week, actually. October 31st is when it officially ends. So as we need to do with grants, we have to report to show progress that we have met the grant objectives to. So this was a grant that was funded by the U.S. State Department. It's very competitive, and I'm grateful to work with a dean, Dean Shanahagan-Burke, who is here, who really supports the notion of a department chair being able to engage over a period of time with faculty and students in a grant like this too. So it's a lot of work, but we think that it's a funded line of research that can be sustained over time. So as you can see, the U.S. Consulate put up a Facebook post. They were happy to see that it happened, but there's a lot of work that needed to happen more than just the trips to Pakistan, and that was to ensure that we got the equipment to schools. So my colleague from North Carolina, he is finishing his doctorate there this year. He was able to visit all 10 schools and 4 universities to ensure the equipment, which is a process, ordering through the various systems to make sure that the equipment, that we were able to differentiate it because different schools needed. Some wanted 2 ping pong tables, some wanted more cricket materials too. So we got the appropriate sports equipment that met their goals and objectives that we were able to document too. So that was a several month-long process as well. Meanwhile, we were checking in via Padlet through videos and updates to see how is success looking in your particular school. So here are just a few examples that they would show and highlight videos of students playing a particular sport, being able to show leadership strategies happening in schools. So we kept this conversation going throughout the year, and it continues today. We're hoping to build a sustained learning community. I had worked with these colleagues in Idea STEM, a STEM-focused grant like this, back in 2019 at my previous institution. So it's been great to continue to see success in those respective areas. Now you recall, we had a goal of 1,000. As of this month, over 4,800 female students have been impacted. So we've nearly quintupled our goal, which is great for the State Department to see this as well. The equipment was successfully distributed to all the schools, and whenever we seek to empower women, the male students benefited as well. Over 7,000 total students are benefiting from the equipment, the strategies, and the lessons that our 10 partner schools in our 4 universities are documenting in our spreadsheets and in our Padlet too. So we're, again, very thrilled to see how this continues over time.
Well, we're going to turn and have time for questions. Before doing that, I just wanted to reiterate that underneath this is the desire that Baylor indeed, and kind of the conversation that's gaining traction among us with Pro Mundo, that something out of today would inspire that. There's a simplicity to what we did, right? But that's because we were able to leverage relationships and know-how. Baylor has an incredible wealth, right? Yes, our faculty, but even our students. I mean, you're seeing graduate students involved, you're seeing athletes involved. We have performing arts, we have theater, we have dance. We have such a wealth, right, of resources here. And to just think through today what we could do and what a difference that could make. The poet laureate of Pakistan is named Allama Iqbal. Many of us will read about him in one of our classes if you take anything in the history department. But he said, the perception of life as an organic unity is a slow achievement. And it depends for its growth on a people's entry into the main current of world events. He experienced that as a graduate student. He traveled to England, to Germany. Baylor, I don't know if you realize this yet, but our graduate school is just flourishing. This is the first year where we have more international graduate students than undergraduates. And the trend seems to just be continuing. As we have conversations, the quality and just the cutting edge research that's being done from here is drawing people from all around the world. And it's causing us to think through how are we going to receive people well, and then possibly how are we going to go back with them and continue our research forward. So there will be times for thanks and appreciation in a minute, but let's have some questions from the audience. Feel free to do that. Do we have a microphone? Or I think we could probably just hear you, and I'll restate your question. Thank you.
Sure, I'll answer that one. So among the various themes that we had, I led the workshop on conflict resolution. Understanding that Pakistan is largely a Muslim society, so whether we are instructing kids in a Christian school or a public school, there will be largely Muslim students there and very few minority kids from whatever other faith background. So one of the topics that I broached on in terms of resolving conflicts was preventing them in the first place. So use some strategies for social emotional learning and just helping teachers from the majority community to understand that they are the ones who need to model care for students from marginalized communities, because students who come from marginalized communities often themselves have a difficult time adopting an attitude of care because they've always been in survival mode. So one, that the teacher can facilitate that development and also model it for other students when students from the minority community have a difficulty, being a team player because they're trying to survive, basically. So that's just one aspect of it.
I'll restate the question. How did you go about selecting the partner institution, University of Education, and by what process the schools you worked with?
We were fortunate to have a prior relationship with the University of Education Lahore, the host university. I had worked with them in my prior role in North Carolina on a similar grant. However, we had several other universities from our dream team up here in the schools they had worked. Brooke and Charlie had served at Foreman Christian, so we added them as a partner. Hina had taught at Kinnaird College, as well as Foreman, too. And after seeking their counsel, I thought, what other schools to really make it an expansive team that was built on Baylor as the lead, but also North Carolina, 4 universities, too. We just sought counsel from this team and came up with 4 participating universities that we reached out to them to. The interesting thing about it is they all signed on. They all help teach afternoon sessions too. So we think that this could be a continuation where we're building on this for future. We've since written other proposals to be able to continue State Department funded work. So we see this as something that goes, again, beyond just one grant that's a year long, but hopefully helps connect Baylor with this region in Pakistan. There's a lot of potential.
So the question was, I was curious how you taught them about movement breaks. I'm echoing for those who are online, and how you went about teaching that, Meredith.
Yes, so I got to do this from afar on Zoom, and so Brooke will share how they did it in person. But movement can look both having a lesson that you actually use your hands, use body language in a lesson if you're talking about something using your body, but then also high impact exercises and low impact exercises like stretching. And so something like that, also having a ball, passing it around the room, just simple things like that is one way you get people moving and engaged in a way that's different. And research shows too, having a just small break of movement helps to actually create greater engagement for the lesson. And so doing something simple as throwing around the room, doing jumping jacks, having more stretching, doing something like that, both high and low impact. And so we looked at that one strategy they got to do in Pakistan. And so Brooke will share kind of what they got to do in person too.
Yes, I was the movement leader for our time there together. And so some of the ladies were like, oh no, just let me sit here, you know? And we were always just like, okay, it's time to get up, let's move around the room. And even, maybe it's just turn and talk and share with your neighbor. That's also a type of movement. But especially when I actually took a lot, John Eckert's book, Just Teaching, was kind of the springboard for my talk, actually, that ended up being a little bilingual. So it was fun for me to develop motions also, and that's a fun way. I mean, we think this is childish, right? But adults love this kind of stuff. And how many people get up and just talk, you know, and we're just sitting there and we're not participating. So getting anybody up, no matter what age they are, to make it more memorable and to use our bodies is a whole nother way of learning a concept. So.
And I got to teach the session, and my resource was drawn from the Faith and Sports Institute at Truett, so they helped equip me, and we used images. We had a stack of images, and we'd have people move to different tables and kind of use cards to reflect on how they're feeling or to retell an experience from that. And so again, movement, standing, conversation, engaging your imagination, storytelling.
That's a great question, because you don't want this just to be a one-stop grant effort, too. So the fact that this is the second in sort of a series, first focused on STEM, now focused on sports. We had another proposal focused that we involved Dr. Eddie Contreras and this team, and Rishi Sriram, Dr. Rishi Sriram as well, focused on higher education leadership. So we're continuing to look through proposals, notice of funding opportunities, or NOFOs. We look to say, could we continue with this team that we have to partner with our colleagues? So we continue, we use WhatsApp to have meetings with the team. We continue to stay in the loop, both formally and informally. Whenever there is a friendly cricket match between Pakistan and the U.S., there's a lot of friendly banter back and forth about who was winning and so forth, too. We celebrated their gold medal that they had recently in the Olympics, too. So it's a relationship and it's a friendship. We've broken bread together as well. So on the academic side, we have an article under review at a peer review journal right now. We're continuing to look at data. Dr. Magnusen is looking at some of the evaluation data that I referenced earlier, now that we're ending this month, and to be able to have some academic postmarks out of that as well through peer review conferences and also publications.
Yes, please.
Are there any specific challenges you faced in terms of incorporating the sports to them, or were there any sports that were challenging or hard, or any sports you're oh wow, they're really good at and easy to learn?
So the question was, were there sports that were challenging, particularly challenging, or some that were more natural and easy to use?
Well, we have a short video that is about 3 minutes long, and if you will watch it with a sense of grace, if our technical colleague is able to start it, it doesn't have to have sound, there's a little bit of sound. I'll explain as we are showing the video. Over there, the sport of cricket is big. I do not know anything about cricket, so they were very gracious in sharing cricket, an overview, and to allow us to put ourselves out there. And we taught them baseball. Baseball is a sport that we're all familiar with here, but it was completely new to them. Foreman College, in which one of our Brian Furches, he is building, if you've seen the movie, a field of dreams. He's truly building, he and his family, with their own hands, have built a wonderful baseball field. So over this week, we spent time at Foreman. We invited Brian and his family to teach here on the field. We listened to a lot of stories about baseball. We learned cricket. So I think the answer to that question is I struggled with cricket. They learned a lot about baseball, and as you'll see here in this video, we really focused on bringing men and women together to play a friendly game of soccer. This was day 4. By day 4, we had members of the consulate there coming in from the embassy. This is Kristen Hawkins, the consulate general. She welcomed us, gave certificates, and we were dressed to play a friendly game of soccer that you'll see here as well. Hina, is there anything you want to add about sports that you saw of a challenge?
Well, one, that it was pretty impressive to see men and women playing together in a patriarchal culture and a conservative culture. You don't often see that, particularly within Muslim culture. You might see it sometimes in Christian culture. But it was interesting to note that women are playing these sports, they're leading them. Like Brooke mentioned a little bit earlier, they've gone so far as contact sports such as like martial arts, and they're doing well. And these coaches are men, so there's like mixed gendered practices that are happening. And it was all very inspirational to see. And so without us having brought this group together and seeing them intermingle with each other and how they're supporting each other, we probably wouldn't have witnessed a lot of what we did.
As you're watching this, I think it would be a great moment to ask Joanne Cummings, who is a career State Department, or could explain why are grants like this prepared and what is the significance?
He acted like it was his idea. I actually said, "Is it okay if I do this?" So I just wanted to point out the Department of State doesn't fund these things just because, hey, it makes nice stuff. And even though I really hope the relationship continues and the research continues, we also don't do it so that universities can do research. We do it because this is demonstrably one of the most effective ways of building relationships with other countries and helping develop together. We often focus as the United States on where we're having wars, and there seem to be so many right now. But I want you to remember that everywhere there's not a war, that's the State Department. This is a big part of it. Visitors coming to the United States, programs like this. I, in embassies, have worked with so many sports people that have come in. Incredible impact, because I get to stay afterwards and listen to people talking about it afterwards, and the buzz just stays, and people keep talking about, remember that time, and remember what they said, and remembered how we did this. So I cannot say enough good about what this team has done, but also I really want you to recognize that the State Department is all over this, all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any great ideas they would like to pass my way? I think we have room for one more question. Okay, yes, please.
Curious, with women who were involved, how many were married, how many were single, and was there much difference in the behavior between the married and the single women who were involved in the program?
So the question was for the women that were involved, how many were single or married, and was there a difference in experience in that?
I'm not sure of the actual demographics of it. There were women of varying age. As you can see, just from like how they were clothed, you can see some were from a conservative background, some were wearing like, you know, clothes that athletes would wear here. Can you repeat your question?
Difference of experience between
Yes.
those who are married or not?
So Brooke has already like hinted on this. There were some women that didn't want to participate in movement breaks, had to be like coaxed into it, urged into it. But when we were discussing our various themes, and we talked about like leadership, we talked about teamwork, conflict resolution, and what was the fourth one? Anyway, never mind. When we were discussing this, because it was very interactive, all of these women were participating. Some of them would only like interact with other women, but the younger ones were interacting like with everyone, regardless of gender. So that was interesting to see. Yeah, there was like Brooke had mentioned already, there was a lot of joking, a lot of telling stories, and just sharing about each other's lives. And they wanted this to happen again. We couldn't do it, but they really wanted this to happen again for them.
I particularly loved watching this particular, there's one principal and her PE teacher. And what we realized when we got there was that PE teachers were like the lowest of the low when it comes to teachers in Pakistan. And so to see such a positive relationship of this one young, unmarried PE teacher with her older, she was like a mentor and a friend and had such a positive relationship with this PE teacher that really stuck in my mind as something. I mean, as we talk about different religions or different whatever, but also having a positive relationship with our administration. We talked a lot about that, so beautiful to see.
Well, I think we're ready for our closing remarks.
Well, thank you so much, Provost Brickhouse, for being here, and thank you, Charlie and Brooke. I want you to know that my husband and I married in this building 50 years ago. So it's a very special place for us as well. But thank you, Charlie and Meredith and Mag and Brooke and Hina and Bill for participating in the grant and also for sharing your story, which is making a serious impact across the world. We appreciate particularly your thoughtfulness in how you planned it, how you've participated in it, and what you've taken from it. Thank you for doing that. We're also grateful to those of you who co-sponsored the panel, the Center for Global Engagement, Spiritual Life, the Baylor Center for School Leadership, the Institute for Faith and Learning, Middle East Studies, International Studies, and of course, the Baylor Libraries. Thank you, Dean Archer, for your presence today. I would have had him on the program, but he wasn't supposed to be here. He fortunately got through with a meeting in Dallas and drove in hurriedly and made it, and I'm grateful for you making that effort to be here. We also have two of our Keston Board of Advisors, I think, with us, at least two, Joanne Cummings and our Advisory Board Chair, Steve Gardner. And it wouldn't have been possible without Baylor Special Events. Casey Pittman, thank you very, very much. And of course, Baylor's Armstrong Browning Library, especially Rachel Bates for helping us. We had refreshments downstairs, and there are some left, I think. So if you want to snitch some on your way out, feel free to go back down there and do that. And of course, Isabel Easley and Carl Flynn for publicity and arranging the webinar. As you go today, please ponder the words in Matthew 5:16. Where we find the inspiration for Baylor's strategic vision. I'm reading from the Easy English version today. You must be sure that your light shines well. Then you will give light to other people. They will see all the good things that you do. Then they will praise God, our Creator. Thank you for joining us, and feel free to continue to enjoy your conversation with our moderator and panelists. Refreshments downstairs if you like. Thank you for being here.